Okay, welcome everyone to this is a special Sunday night edition of the Anderson Report. I am Tim the Source Anderson. This is my YouTube channel, The Anderson Report. I also broadcast on Periscope on TJ Anderson 12. And I'm sure most people know this by now, but my Twitter handle is TJ Anderson 1. So just checking a couple of things. And I have not been on since last Tuesday. I thought it was important to do something before the week started. I was just visiting some people, and it was just would have been too um, difficult to stream from there. I know we had some very volatile days and very active days in the market. We're going to start by talking about how the market finished for the week and really the last couple of weeks. Because again, similarly to the prior week, and don't get me wrong, there were some rough days and there were some very rough stretches for some key segments of the market. Um, But for the major market averages, other than maybe the Russell 2000, we we have not had. We've had some rough down days. We've also had some sharp up days. Net, we're down over the last couple of weeks, but not as much as you might think. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not downplaying the extent of the sell off that has happened in a few key sectors and the reality that the mega cap growth stocks in Nasdaq are down. Some of them are down 15, close to 20% near their lows. Nasdaq actually outperformed this last week. And before we get into all the details, I just want to emphasize that if you are a new uh, watcher of my YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. It's actually the red subscribe bar under the video. And if you hit the little bell next to it, you will then get notifications of when the next broadcast is scheduled. I try to schedule them 3 to 4 hours in advance. Usually, I will put something up with an appropriate headline, subject, title right after the market closes during the week, and then do either a 7 p.m. or a 9 p.m. show. I know that no time's perfect for everyone. You can always watch it on replay. And as I mentioned right when we first came on, I do also stream on uh, the Periscope channel under TJ Anderson 12. So let's just get into it. We're going to talk about how uh, really how markets acted for the week. I'm not going to go into every day. Friday was an up day. Wednesday was a very ugly down day. We were down about 3% pretty much everywhere on Wednesday. Uh, we were down on the week, but let's see how much. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 1.7% this week. And over the last 2 weeks has lost less than 2%, down 1.8%. So again, the majority of the damage in the market, the S&P 500 has been down 4 weeks in a row. The majority of the selling was in that first week and a half of the sharp decline after the September 2nd highs. The S&P 500 closed just below 3,300. It closed at 3298.50. The S&P 500 was down 0.6% on the week. I mean, that's barely a little bit more than 0.5% with all that volatility. Almost a similar decline to what it had the previous week. The S&P 500 is down 1.3% over the last 2 weeks. Now, the NASDAQ composite, very interesting here. The NASDAQ gained 1.1% on the week. Yes, that is not a typo. The NASDAQ gained 1.1% this week. There were some days when technology clearly outperformed. And but Nasdaq did have a very sharp decline when this sell-off started. We'll get to that in a minute. Over the last 2 weeks, the Nasdaq is up 0.5%. So it was down about a half a percent, a little over half a percent the week before this last week. This last week, it was plus 1.1%. Over that 2 week stretch, we'll say from Monday the 14th to Friday the 25th, Nasdaq was down was plus 0.5% after gaining a little over 1% for the week. Now the Russell 2000 has been underperforming. We mentioned it a couple times. It was down 4% on the week. It's sitting at about 1475. The big resistance level is at 1600. That's it would take quite a bit of work to get back there right now. But really, the week before was the week that the Russell outperformed. So the Russell out, uh, although it lost 4% this last week, over the last 2 weeks, it's only down 1.5%. Now, I think what really hit the Russell and what really hit the market just to start the week was this story that they had Carol, I'll get to that in a minute. Um, the story at the beginning of the week that, oh, we've got big outbreaks in Europe and the UK. The UK is talking about maybe doing another shutdown. They're putting a 10 p.m. curfew on the pubs, et cetera, et cetera. I think that put a big damper on the stocks to start the week, and it hit the stocks in the Russell particularly hard. So, um, now the Dow Jones Transports lost 1.5% this last week. Over the last 2 weeks, they're just a little bit less than flat. Uh, they got up toward their old high. They closed. They had that one day when they closed above 11,500. The old high is 11,570. That's from 2 years and 3 weeks ago. September 14th, 2018, I believe. That's the old high on the transports. The airlines were holding in until this week. They sold off. But really, the rails and a lot of the delivery companies and even the cruise lines were up 3 to 4% on Friday. So, on the week, as ugly as the market felt during certain points of the week, we had a little bit of a recovery on Thursday after a big, ugly day on Wednesday. We had a much stronger recovery on Friday. The Russell was the worst of it on the week, down 4%. Between the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ, anywhere from down 1.7% to the NASDAQ actually up 1%. So there are 3 days left in the third quarter. My experience with end of quarters, unless the market is in an extremely strong downtrend, you're probably going to have a decent day and a half, Monday through Tuesday. Of course, we've got the debates Tuesday night. That could be a wild card for Wednesday and the remainder of the week. I'm sure it has the potential to have a little bit of a market impact. But the last day of the quarter is typically not a big mover. So the last day of the quarter is Wednesday. I think we'll have, I haven't even looked at what the futures are giving us as a little bit of a very, very early indication. it's most likely meaningless by the time we get to 9:30 in the morning, a little bit more than 12 hours from now. But my gut would be, given the fact that markets recovered pretty well Friday, they had a decent bid at the end of the day. Nasdaq's been outperforming. There was clearly a bid back in some of the mega cap, mega growth tech names. Looks like the Nasdaq is up maybe, is that 1%? Uh, No, it's not 1%. Nasdaq's up a little bit. The Dow is up maybe. Dow futures are up about 70 points. S&P futures are up 7. So overseas, they're probably starting off with a positive tone in China. Look, it's 12 hours away. It can be meaningless. We could be down 500 points uh, by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that, you know, I don't put much into the first hour of trading in Asia. I, maybe look at it around 12 o'clock and look and see where Europe opens at 4 o'clock. But no, I will not be up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Um, so there's 3 days left in the month. There's 3 days left in the third quarter. We're going to have a tremendous amount of economic data coming at the market next week. Not, and there will also be a the debates on Tuesday. And Carol has a good question here. Yes, Carol. So on Wednesday, we will get the final revision for second quarter GDP. This is for the quarter March, April, and April, May, and June. Obviously, it was a quarter that was extremely heavily impacted by the COVID 19 self imposed economic shutdown. We had the first piece of data that came out showed a decline for GDP of negative 32.8%. That was revised a little bit up, 31.7%. And the economists, and they're not even guessing at what a revision might be. I think if any revision, it might be a point one direction or the other. But right now, as it stands, second quarter GDP declined 31.7%. That's an astronomical amount, the highest decline we've seen for GDP since the Great Depression, and it wasn't even managed with the same scale that it is now. So, but what you're referring to is the Atlanta. There is a research group associated with the Atlanta Fed. It's actually not the Atlanta Fed. You're talking about the projections for third quarter GDP. Now, even though the third quarter ends on Wednesday, we will still get very important pieces of economic data during the first couple weeks of October. Kicked off pretty much with the September jobs report that we'll get next Friday. So there's a forecasting group that's associated with the Atlanta Fed. It's called the Atlanta Fed GDP Now forecast. It's not really done at the Atlanta. It's not part of the Atlanta Fed per se, but it's associated with them. There's also some of the other central banks, regional central banks, do forecasting of GDP also. But this forecasting group that's associated with the Atlanta Fed is the most widely followed. And they currently have a projection that third quarter GDP will increase by over 30%. So just to make sure but that is off what the big decline from the second quarter. Okay. So let's keep in mind also that the way the math works is if you have a 31.7 decline, 31.7, which is where it stands now for second quarter, GDP declined 31.7%. Let's just say, for the source of an argument, that GDP for the third quarter would increase 31.7%. That would not get you back to where the gross domestic product was at the beginning of the second quarter. Because if you started at 100 and declined 31.7%, you'd be down to like 68, 68.3. And then if from 68.3 you increased 31.7%, you're measuring that percentage off a lower base, so you're not going to get back to even. Okay, but no doubt about it, when the Trump economic team and Larry Kudlow and any of the other economists and any of the economists that have been fairly bullish on Wall Street say have been talking about a V-shaped recovery, that is certainly 4/5, 80 to 90% of a V-shaped recovery. Now, there's a lot of work to do because unemployment is still very high. Yes, that was the Atlanta Fed, Carol, that you were referring to. And they are currently projecting, there's a few more pieces of data. They will tweak that estimate even into mid-October. And third quarter GDP, the initial read, or what they call the advance read for third quarter GDP, will be announced probably on the Wednesday or Thursday of the last week of um, the month. Ironically, a few days before, less than a week before the election. Might be announced on Wednesday, might be announced on Thursday, might be announced on Friday. I don't have the exact date right now, but I'll button that up as we get into the week a little bit. So if you got a 30% increase bump, that would not get you all the way back to where we were, because we also declined 5% in the first quarter. All of it from the decline in March. But it will be, if GDP does come in for the third quarter with a 30%, 30 to 32% increase, believe me, the Trump economic team will be doing cartwheels down Pennsylvania Avenue. So that Atlanta Fed, if we, you know what, I will mention it tomorrow night. I'm not going to pull it up right now to see what their latest reading is. There's a lot of data coming at us next week. I'm sure it will be revised at least once or twice, but clearly it's going to be a big increase in the third quarter after a monumental decline in the second quarter. So, before I get into the economic calendar for next week, and there's plenty to talk about there, let's just talk about where the markets stand, because it's been a rough September for markets. And September is historically the worst performing month for the stock market. Over time, if you took the average advance or decline for months going back, I don't know, go back 50 years, 60 years, September is the worst performing month on average, on record, for the stock market. Now, a lot of people always talk about that the market has a tendency to sometimes really get hit hard in October. On the years when that has happened, the slide has really started in September. You've had a very, very, very sharp decline in October, and then sometimes so sharp of a recovery that October ends up either with a gain or with uh, maybe a mild decline. But October is the month when you get big stock market volatility, although we had that this time in September. there's certainly still the opportunity for a lot more. Um, there's certainly the opportunity for a lot more volatility uh, in the month of October, particularly with some election uncertainty uh, that's yet to be resolved, and particularly with one of the bit larger risks is that we get with all this mail-in voting, where some states say they're going to continue to count for 3 to 5 days, or maybe as long as 10 days. If you ran into a scenario where the outcome of the election was still undetermined 5 days out, the market would not take very well to that at all. Turbine, prediction on how the market will react to the nomination of ACB for Amy Coney Barrett for Supreme Court. I really don't think it's going to react a whole lot to that. I know that some people are trying to say how she might vote on the Affordable Care Act. Maybe it would throw a little bit of uncertainty into some healthcare stocks. But look, the Affordable Care Act is not going to come up to the Supreme Court as an up or down on this specific, on the whole act in and of itself. Certain aspects of it may still be challenged, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not going to be like the I don't I don't feel that the court is going to rule on the Affordable Care Act in total, although there may be portions of it that, if it ruled unfavorably on, could cause problems for the longevity of the act in and of itself. I think the whole thing has issues regardless. It could just, you know, die its own death over the next 4 years or so. But to specifically answer your question, I don't think the market's reacting to um, Amy Barrett being nominated to the court any differently than it would any of the other potential picks. The only thing I would say is um, if the confirmation process got extremely ugly, a la Kavanaugh, uh, the market might take a little bit of an objection to that. But there'll be plenty. I think there's plenty of other things for the market to focus on without that. So uh, let's take a look at how the market averages did in the month of September. We mentioned that over the last 2 weeks, uh, the Dow was down 1.8%, S&P 500 down 1.3%, Nasdaq up 0.5%, and you'll see where all the large majority of the damage was done in the first 10 days of the month after September 2nd, from September 2nd to the 11th, which was a Friday. So the Dow is down 4.4% for the month. For quarter to date, the Dow is up 5.3%. So you can see, obviously, we had a very strong July. We had a very strong August. We've had a very rough September. The Dow down 4.4%. The S&P 500 down 5.7%. The S&P 500 is up 6.5% quarter to date. That's with a decline of just over 5.5% for September, with 3 days to go in the month. Now, the NASDAQ composite is up 8.5% quarter to date. That's from the end of June, July, August, September, 3 days to go in the quarter. The NASDAQ composite is up 8.5%. That includes being down 7.3% in the month of September. So the NASDAQ was up, look, 15% on the quarter coming into September. That was just an unsustainable advance. That was after an 18% increase in the first half of the year. The NASDAQ at that point in time was up 32-ish, 32.5% year to date. Unsustainable. We saw things start get a little bit silly the last couple of days of August, the first 2 days of September. That's when the highs were put in. The Nasdaq closed above 12,000. The S&P 500 closed at 3580. The S&P 500 went out a point and a half below 3,300. The Nasdaq went out 86 points below 11,000. The Nasdaq does rally tomorrow and or Tuesday, watch the 11,000 level. I think the 50-day moving average for the Nasdaq is right around like 11,015, let's call it. So about 100 points higher than where the Nasdaq is right now. The Russell 2000, the underperformer for the year, and certainly for the month. Actually, not for the month. The Nasdaq's down 6.5% on the month. Not the Nasdaq. The Russell 2000 is down 6.5% on the month. It's plus 2.3% quarter to date. Okay. So the Russell was having a pretty good quarter coming into the month. It's got hit hard, down 4% this last week, down 6.6% for the month with 3 days to go. Now, the star of the market has been the transportation average. The Dow Jones Transports closed at 11,270. On the week, down 1.4%. Over the last 2 weeks, pretty much unch, down like 0.1%. For September, the Dow Jones Transports are positive by 0.75%. For the quarter, the transportation average is up 22.8%. That's the airlines coming off ultra depressed levels due to their, really, really bad second quarters. And they were all for all practical purposes, they were almost shut down. I mean, I talked about it weeks and, a couple of months ago when United Airlines second quarter earnings came out and their revenues were down 93% versus the same quarter a year earlier. Now the TSA numbers have been picking up a little bit. They haven't gotten over that million count yet. You've had a few counts above 900,000. You had Friday's number, I think, was 880, maybe about 30 or 40,000 above the prior. Actually, we don't have Friday's number yet. We won't get that till Monday. So that was Thursday's number. Thursday's number was plus 880, maybe up 30 or 40,000 from the prior Thursday. The airlines got hit when the fears started going around about, big outbreaks early in the week. I think that they're probably going to, try to recover a little bit this week. But the transports up 22%, almost 23% quarter to date. That also includes the truckers, the rails, some delivery companies, FedEx, UPS, near their all-time highs, FedEx and UPS. So the transports, after gaining 9% in July and 12% in August, still have a gain, the only big average that's in the green, of 0.75% for the month of September. That could change. We got 3 days left in the month and the quarter. But the transports have been the story of the month. One note on Friday, I didn't write down a lot of the other data on Friday. I did notice the advanced decline line was pretty constructive at the New York, 3-1 positive. NASDAQ, even a little better than that, between 3.5 and 4-1 positive. So you had three stocks advancing for every one that declined at the NYSE. Better than that on the NASDAQ. And as rough, I mentioned it a few times. I got a lot of Twitter comments on Wednesday and Thursday. You know, how much longer is this decline going to go? It's really, this week was kind of like the reverse of the prior week, because the prior week we started out Monday, Tuesday were good. Wednesday was good until the middle of the day. And then we lost steam, close to the downside. And Thursday and Friday were ugly to the downside. This week, the market off started very off weak. And then Thursday, we had a little bit of a gain, and Friday we had a pretty significant gain. Yeah, the airlines have issues, Turbine. I mean, I, t- on the positive side, I think that, and nobody likes to see job cuts, but they have reduced their workforce quite a bit. I flew a little over a week ago from Michigan through O'Hare and then to Newark Airport. I will tell you that uh, O'Hare, I flew back here on a Saturday. I had flown out on a Sunday 2 weeks earlier. O'Hare was much busier on my trip back, which was 2 weeks after I flew out, than when I flew out. And I flew out on a Sunday, which is usually the busier day of the two. Sundays usually, Fridays and Sundays are the busiest day for the airlines. Saturday there's traffic, but usually if people are going somewhere for the weekend, they're going on Friday, they're coming back on Sunday. Those are the highest volume days for TSA checkpoint volume. Um, and to me, O'Hare was notably busier than when I'd flown out 2 weeks earlier. So the airlines do have issues. There's no question about it. The only thing I would say is, um, let's see, my flight from O'Hare to Newark was United. The middle seats were left open. And aside from that, the flight was pretty full. The aisle and window seats were pretty full. Um, I think they might be taking that middle seat restriction off sometime this coming month. I'm not absolutely certain of it. And I also felt that the airline, it was notable that the airplane just felt very clean. And they do make a big deal of talking about how they disinfect the plane after the planes after every flights. So I kind of feel that as people, maybe if people haven't flown at all since the COVID thing started, if they fly once or twice, or if they talk to people who have flown, I think you're going to hear this chatter a little bit as we get into the fourth quarter, that you'll hear people talking about how they flew. Of course, there'll always be a few bad stories. You'll hear people talking about how they flew and um they thought it was they felt pretty good about it. Yeah, see, their big turbine, their big issue, and it's the most profitable part of their business, is the international travel. The international travel is just not going to come back until mid 21. We're at least 3 quarters away from international travel coming back, even to any anywhere near what it was. It probably takes um, full distribution of whatever vaccine this is going to be, for international travel to really start to get any traction at all because it's just nowhere right now. Now it's 9:35. So just real quick on a couple of sectors. The best sector last week, S&P, of the 11 S&P sectors, information technology. That's your big NASDAQ mega cap internet traffic trade stocks. It was up over 2%. Consumer discretionary up 1.2%. Utilities up 1.2%. That's a defense trade. All the other eight sectors were pretty much in the red column. The worst sector by far, a big decline of 8.5% for the S&P 500 energy sector. I think we had made quite a mention of the week before. It was up 4% on the increase in the price of oil from 37 to 41. Oil backtracked a little bit this week. And then I think when you had the story, certainly the story out of California on either Thursday or Friday, that they were going to ban gas operated vehicles by 2035. Yeah, that's 15 years from now. Sounds pretty hard to do to me, but the S&P 500 energy sector down 8.5%, materials down 4.5%, financials down 4%. Very bad article on financials to start the week. They didn't really recover that much. So this coming week, we're going to have a jam-packed week of economic activity. Monday's pretty void, but on Tuesday we'll get consumer confidence from the conference board. Looking for a number at around 90. That index is calibrated a little higher than the University of Michigan confidence number. And we'll also get Case-Shiller home prices. The housing market's been very, very strong, fueled by mortgage rates below 3%, people wanting to move out of the cities into the suburbs, and really a shortage of new homes. On Wednesday, we get the ADP employment report for September, which of course always precedes the big kahuna, which is the September jobs report, which will come on Friday. ADP's looking for an increase of 600,000 jobs. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're looking for an increase of 800,000 jobs. There's always a little bit of back and forth in those two reports. But the number on Friday, October 2nd, the jobs report will be a big release. Also on Wednesday, we get the third and final GDP, second quarter GDP number. It currently stands at minus 31.7. It might move. It might, get a movement of a point or so one way or the other. We'll get the Chicago PMI number. That's the purchasing manager's report for the Chicago region, the Chicago out of the Chicago Fed office. It's not really out of Chicago Fed office, but it's for the Midwest. Consensus is for 53. That would be up from a prior reading of 51.2. But it's significant that would be the second month above the 50.00 threshold of expansion contraction. You get that PMI number above for either the PMI or the PMI services sector above 50. That's an expand. That means the economy is expanding a little bit. Below 50, it's it's in contraction territory. And then we got a whole bunch of stuff on Thursday. Personal income spending, PCE prices, personal consumption and expenditures. Of course, we'll get the initial claims and the ISM manufacturing. That will that's always back to back with, well, a day or two behind the Chicago PMI report. One big IPO coming this week. I'm not sure what day. Palantir, that is Peter Thiel's data management firm. A lot of business with the government, a lot of business with a lot of other people, a little bit controversial. It's going to be valued. The estimates are it's going to be valued at 22 billion, maybe come at about $10 a share. It will be very interesting to see how that IPO is received. And that will be, in terms of the IPO market, that will be one of the bigger topics of conversation for the last couple months, although there have been some sizable IPOs. So um, that is kind of all I have right now. I will definitely be on tomorrow night. If anyone is a first time viewer, this is my YouTube channel, The Anderson Report. If anyone out there has not subscribed yet, please hit the red subscribe bar and the little bell next to it. You'll get notifications of when the next show is. You can also watch on Periscope at TJ Anderson 12. You can always watch the YouTube broadcast on replay. I know many people in my business who watch it on the way in if they take the train in the morning. Try to keep it to about 35 or 40 minutes. I'm right at 42 minutes right now. And my YouTube, my Twitter handle is TJ Anderson 1. So I'm glad to be back on. I was traveling a little bit the end of last week. Hadn't been on since last Tuesday. Clearly some very volatile activity in the market. I wouldn't be surprised to see more volatility as we get into next week. There's 3 trading days left in the quarter, and then we go into the fourth quarter. And of course, you've got the, in addition to the full plate of economic data next week, you've got the first presidential debates on Tuesday night. And we'll see how the market reacts to that, if there is a market reaction. But thank you everyone for watching. I appreciate everyone's support, and we'll be on. Rachel, thank you. We'll be on tomorrow. I'm going to say most likely at 7:00, but I will put out a notification mid to late afternoon just to confirm that. Have a great night, everyone.